So with Zhu Yuan going to be gone pretty soon and having her voluptuous hips, thighs, and everything else going to be leaving us soon, I think we need to talk about how to build her. And so guys, I'm going to be talking about how to build Zhu Yuan and how to make her effective on the field. And so hey guys, my name is Mr. Ocean, and without further ado, let's just get started. So let's first talk about Zhu Yuan and talk about exactly her skills and abilities that she has to offer inside of her kit. So first, let's kind of talk about her passive abilities. So when it comes to her core passive, we have Special Operations Ammunition. So when Zhu Yuan is under suppression mode, using enhanced shot shells increases her damage by 40%. And when attacking stunned enemies, this buff damage is going to be increased by an additional 40%. And when Zhu Yuan enters the battlefield, she immediately gains 6 enhanced shot shells. This is really good for her because her enhanced shot shells is going to be her core factor of how she works. And so how she functions is she's going to be gaining shot shells just kind of similar to how you accumulate flash charges when it comes to Ellen. But however, when she's using say her basic attacks, EX skills, or any other types of abilities that you'll see so far later in the video, that she's essentially going to be collecting these shot shells, which will allow her to go into a state of a mode called suppression mode, which I will talk about pretty soon. And so following with that, we're going to be talking about her additional ability, which is the passive ability that happens when you are selecting your characters, which or not, whether they are going to be coordinating with one another or not. And so moving on, we have tactical coordination. And so when another character in your squad is a support character or shares the same faction, Zhu Yuan's crit rate is increased by 30% for 10 seconds after using an EX special attack, chain attack, or ultimate. This is very crucial for you because you're going to want to do this, and I feel like it's beneficial for you to have this. So as of right now in the game currently, we are going to soon have Qingyi in a couple of days because her banner is coming up soon. And so if you guys are going to get her, make sure to have that so her passive is going to be active so Zhu Yuan can have that additional crit rate by 30%. But as of right now, everybody can have this passive active if you have her, if you put on Nicole into your team, because Nicole is a free character right off the bat when you start the game, because she is one of 3 free characters that you will get. And so everybody's going to have her, so being able to activate that will be beneficial because one, she's an ether character and she's in a support character, which list in the description here. And now to follow up with her skills to see exactly what she uses inside the field. So we have her basic attack, Don't Move. So she unleashes a fury of martial arts, bullets, and ether buckshots in a series of up to 5 attacks, dealing physical damage and ether damage. When the 4th or 5th hits strikes an enemy, she obtains 1 shot shell, and she will gain up to a maximum of 1 shot shell per skill use. So as you're doing your basic attack, she's essentially having 2 types of ways of attacking. When she's up close to the enemy, she's going to be able to do her martial art movements, which will do physical damage. And once she starts to enhance it with her weapon or her pistol in hand, she is going to be now dealing ether damage. And that's upon that 4th and 5th hit is when she's going to be enhancing her shot shell, which like I said earlier, this is something that you're going to need to gain over time. And using her basic attacks are actually very helpful because it may seem like a small margin of only gaining 1, but her basic attacks are very quick and very fast that you'll be accumulating shot shells pretty quickly over time. Following up with that, we have her other basic attack, Please Do Not Resist. So she unleashes up to 3 shot shells, piercing attacks, and dealing physical damage. And if Zhu Yuan has enhanced shot shells, upon firing, 1 shot shell will be used and consumed, dealing massive ether damage. While using this skill, she can move around and use something with her dash attack called Overwhelming Power. And she can readjust her position, and while she's in the suppressive mode, she's able to be flexible and more mobile. And so with this basic attack skill, you're essentially going to be consuming your shot shells. And I believe as a maximum of shot shells, you have around 9. I may be incorrect on that one as of right now. When it comes to her shot shells, she's essentially going to be firing massive blasts of ether damage, and she could be able to move around flexibly, and that's what makes her very viable. Rather than say the character like Billy, he feels so stiff and stationary, but with Zhu Yuan, she is very mobile and she can move freely throughout her entire motion. She feels more of a comfortable, suitable play style when she comes free of motion. And so using that, you want to accumulate your shot shells in order to use this skill, because when you're using your normal shot skills and you're holding down the button, you're just going to be doing physical damage. So it's better for you to gain those shot shells in order to do ether damage. Moving on to her dodge abilities. And so for her regular dodge, it just works like every other character in the game, where she's going to be invulnerable in the state, and while being able to dodge is just very beneficial when you don't want to get hit by enemies. So we're just going to move on to her dash attack. So we have firepower offense. And so when using this basic attack, she's going to be able to dodge and use her handgun to deal physical damage. And like I said before, it's when you're going to be using your suppressive mode is when you have the combination of have this dash attack, firepower offense, which you're going to be able to move around and be able to do either physical attack or, again, do ether damage depending on how much shot charges you have. And so now we're going to move on to her dash attack, overwhelming firepower. So this is when she's going to be moving around, and this is when she's going to unleash a shot shell piercing attack, dealing physical damage. And again, if she has an enhanced shot shell, when firing, it's going to be consumed, dealing massive ether damage. So this is basically her dash attack when she's in motion, and not when you're just dashing in general. This is really good because you're going to accumulate that ether damage, and it's always going to proc no matter what, unless you have a shot shell being consumed. And so for her dodge counter, it's going to be Fire Blast. And so when she activates a perfect dodge, she's going to shoot enemies in front with an ether buckshot, dealing ether damage. And with this skill, she is going to gain an enhanced shot shell on skill use, and in this state, the character is going to be invulnerable. This is the only dodge so far that is going to gain her an enhanced shot shell, unlike her basic attack as well, which one of them is going to allow her to have a shot shell, which is her normal basic attack. For her dodge, this is going to be the skill right here that will gain her a shot shell. So far, we have two ways of having enhanced shot shells. And so next, we're going to move on to her special attacks. So first, we have Buckshot Blast. So she shoots ether buckshots that deal ether damage, and this can be repeated up to 3 times by repeatedly pressing the special attack. With this skill right here, this is going to be with no energy. So you're going to be able to freely do ether damage and have that rapid up to 3 times, doing rapid fire. However, this might be a little bit less of damage rather than her EX special, just because one, you do not have accumulated energy. Also, it's just beneficial for the most part out of every character so far to try to use their EX special. And so moving on to her EX special, Full Barrage. She's going to shoot a series of ether buckshots that explode and deal massive ether damage. And upon activation, she's going to gain 3 enhanced shot shells. The character in this state is going to be invulnerable. This right here seems like the most amount so far of gaining enhanced shot shells, since she's going to be gaining 3. However, it's going to take a little bit more time since you're going to want to have more energy. And depending on how you play with Zhu Yuan, it seems that her energy consumption and how she gains energy seems fairly decent. And so you'll probably have your EX skill up at enough time in order to gain enough shot shells. However, with your dodge and being able to do perfect dodge and with your basic attacks, you should be fine by having enough shot shells over time while you're playing with her. And as well, with that actual passive itself, she is going to be gaining that enhanced shot shell. So don't forget about that, because when she immediately comes back into combat, she's going to be fully stacked with shot shells. So it also is going to count when you're in rotation and everything like that. Next, we have her chain attack and ultimate. So for this one, I'm going to be basically talking about it the same way because they are descripted pretty much the same way. So we're going to just talk about the ultimate, Max Eradication Mode. So when she has enough energy and she's accumulated with her decibel rating, she's going to unleash an ultimate attack when she's using her modified Master Firearm to execute and saturated attacks, fire lasers, and seeking missiles to deal massive ether damage. And upon activation, she's going to gain 3 enhanced shot shells. So this is another way to gain enhanced shot shells. However, this is not the best way, and this is kind of the end all be all thing kind of situation to where your ultimate is taking time in order to accumulate, and an ultimate can only be activated by one character on the field. So you kind of have to use it wisely, and depending on which character you want and which characters you're using on the field, it might be better to use that ultimate on somebody else. Like say if you have Nicole, it's better for her since you're going to be having that buff or debuffs. And so with that, I would say rather than using her ult all the time, use it at the time of moment when you have those stacks, and as well, again, when you have that increased crit rate, so you can add the ultimate proc, so you can be able to have it proc much easier. To follow up with that, let's talk about her W engines. And so for her W engines, let's talk about Riot Suppressor Mark 6. And so with this, it's W engine effect Security Patrol, increasing crit rate by 26.4%. Launching an EX special attack grants the equipper 8 charges and stacks up to a maximum of 8 stacks. And whenever the equipper's basic attack deals ether damage, it's going to be consumed and increase the skill's damage by 60.5%. This weapon is really good. Again, this is her main weapon, and this is the weapon that's in the banner. And so this is really good because one, her crit rate is going to be increased, and as well, having those stacks and those charges to have it to where she's going to have increased damage is really good because again, she's going to be using her basic attacks a lot, her EX skills, and you're going to have her on the field quite often, dealing the most heaviest of damage. And so following up with that, another good viable weapon for her, if you don't have her main weapon, as an S rank, is going to be the Brimstone. For its W engine effect, Scorching Breath, upon hitting an enemy with a basic attack, dash attack, or a dodge counter, the equipper's attack is increased by 6% for 8 seconds, and stacking up to 8 times. And this effect can trigger once every 0.5 seconds, and the duration of each stack is calculated very separately. So with this, you're going to be using your dash attacks, dodge counters, and basic attacks. So this weapon is very catered to trying to use your basic attacks, dash attacks, and dodge counters. And with your dodge counters and basic attacks, it's going to be good because you're going to to be gaining those stacks of shot shells, and which is really good. And having an increase in attack is also beneficial for her. I'm going to explain why later in this video. Now we're moving on to the A rank weapons, and these are for if you do not have any of the S rank weapons for her. These are also very viable for her as well. So first we're going to start off with Starlight Engine, and for its W engine effect, Night Pummel, we have launching a dodge counter or a quick assist increases the attacker's attack by 19.2% for 12 seconds. And this is really good since increasing her attack again is really good, that I will mention later in the video, is also very beneficial for her. And being able to launch your dodge counters and your quick assists is also good as well, since you're going to be doing the switch whenever enemies are stunned or dazed. And if you were to have, say, a certain character like Nicole, you could be able to quick swap back to Zhu Yuan, being able to do massive damage for her on her quick assist. So next we're going to go to Cannon Rotor, and Cannon Rotor is a battle pass weapon. So for its description of W engine effect, oversized barrel, it increases attack by 10.8%. Landing a critical hit on the enemy will inflict 200% of attack as damage, and this effect can trigger once every 6.5 seconds. The more you're going to level this up as the attack increases, that is going to be increased by 200%, dealing that as damage. So it's going to be an entire increase of damage. So the normal base damage that the weapon is going to be doing that you will see under attacks, imagine that just increased by 200%. So this W engine is very viable. However, it is very nuanced because one, you're going to have to deal with a timer of being procced 6.5 seconds, and as well, it's not as beneficial as the other W engines, as they're kind of more of a consistent gain of buff rather than in a short time duration. Next, we're going to follow up with her best disc drives, and for disc drives that I would want to recommend, Chaotic Metal, Woodpecker Electro, and Puffer Electro. So starting off with Chaotic Metal. So for the 2-piece, it's going to increase her damage by 10%, and for the 4-piece, the equipper's crit damage increases by 20%. And when any character in the squad triggers Corruption, additional damage, and this will further increase the effect by 5.5% for 8 seconds, stacking up to 6 times. And this will repeat triggers, will also reset the actual duration of this effect. When using this, you can use this as well, because when Zhu Yuan affects and uses Corruption, she's going to be increasing that additional damage by 5.5%, and it can be stacked all the way up to 33%. This is a very good disc drive for her because one, you're gaining more ether damage, and you're also increasing crit damage, which is something that you viably need for an attack character such as Zhu Yuan. A 4-piece would be highly recommended for this character. So now moving on to Woodpecker Electro, and for its 2-piece, it's going to increase crit rate by 8%, and for its 4-piece, landing a critical hit on an enemy with a basic attack, dodge counter, or EX special attack increases the equipper's attack by 9% for 6 seconds. The buff's duration is different, and the skills will be calculated separately. This is a really good set. However, I would only use the 2-piece on Zhu Yuan because using the 4-piece Chaotic Metal would be more beneficial for her, and the only beneficial one for this would be the 2-piece because you want that increased crit rate. Now moving on to Puffer Electro. So for its 2-piece, it increases pen ratio by 8%, and for the 4-piece, ultimate damage increases by 20%. Launching an ultimate increases the attack by the equipper for 15% for 12 seconds. This is good as well. Again, I would still recommend the 2-piece. The 4-piece I would not recommend as well because again, the Chaotic Metal is more beneficial for Zhu Yuan than all these other disc drives. And so again, if you were to want to build this, I would recommend a 4-piece Chaotic Metal and a 2-piece Woodpecker Electro, and if not, you can have 4-piece Chaotic Metal and a 2-piece Puffer Electro. And then moving on to her main stats, disc 4, you would want to have crit rate and crit damage. And like I said before, having crit rate and crit damage is good because you want to have as much crit rate as possible and as much crit damage as possible, but within a good ratio. So you want to be able to have it to where you can be able to proc that as well, and upon using that with her passive, being able to do that is good because it's going to increase that crit rate and being able to proc that ability as much as possible. For disc 5, you want ether damage because ether damage is her most bread and butter. That's the damage she's going to be doing the most. Yes, she will be doing physical damage from time to time, but ether damage is the most damage that she does, and she does it a little bit more consistently than other characters in the game. And for disc 6, you can have a attack percent because again, attack percent is very good and beneficial for her, and like I said later, it's going to add up over time. Now when it comes to substats, again, so for substats you'd want to focus on crit rate, crit damage, attack percentage, and pen ratio. Like I said, for crit rate and crit damage, you want to have the chance and the occurrence of being able to crit a much higher, and as well the maximum amount of crit damage that you could be able to do is also going to be great for her. And for attack percentage, it's great to build up attack on characters since they're going to be using their attack quite often and most of the time be on the field to dealing attack damage. And as for pen ratio, again, it's going to be shredding the enemy's defense, and it's going to be less significant for them to, defend against that if you have more pen ratio. As for Bangboos that I would recommend for her and her team, I would want to recommend using Rezanabu. Rezanabu is the best S-rank character for ether damage that will help build up your anomaly, and so far is, I think, a very satisfactory type of Bangboo. Since it kind of feels like a mini Nicole, she's going to have a black hole that's going to be absorbing and sucking up the enemies. And if you don't have her, you can also have Devil Boo. She is very good. She is not the best, and she is not way better than Rezanabu, but she is definitely a very solid choice when it comes to it. And as well, the new Officer Bangboo is going to be coming soon in a couple of days, so that is also going to be a beneficial Bangboo. That would also be a great choice for her as well. And so now when it comes to team comps are very important. So for her premium team comp, we would want to have Zhu Yuan, Lycan, and Rina. Since Rina is great as a support character and she's able to suck up enemies as much as possible, and having electro damage is also very good, since electro and corruption are very good elements in being able to cause disorder. And for Lycan is so far and by far one of the best stun characters in the game, being able to just stun procs constantly and with daze. He is very mobile and he's also very flexible, and he's very good with his attacks and everything like that. For a free-to-play team comp, you would want to have Zhu Yuan, Anbi, and Nicole. Since Anbi and Nicole are both free characters, they are very accessible and very affordable. And so for Nicole, again, she is very good as a support. She's good at buffing and debuffing enemies. And for Anbi, a great stunner, and again, as an electro character, being able to use corruption and electro are great combinations for disorder. And lastly, let's move on to her cinemas. And if you want to afford to get her, and if you have enough money to get her, because I would say for free-to-play players, it is not as easy to get all 6. But if you're a player that likes to spend their money on this game, then I'm going to explain that right now. So for Cinema 1, we have Quick Reload. So when Zhu Yuan activates her chain attack or ultimate, she will gain a quick reload effect. And so when Zhu Yuan has the quick reload effect, she uses all of her enhanced shot shells, and the quick reload effect will be consumed to instantly gain 6 to 9 enhanced shot shells. So with this, it's essentially just how the word is. It's like a quick reload. Will she be able to gain a lot and a maximum amount of shot shells? This is very good for her, again, but it's not her greatest adversary. And so for Cinema 2, we have Ether Ember. So in her suppression mode, Zhu Yuan's anti-interruption level is going to be increased, and damage taken is going to be reduced by 10%. And when Zhu Yuan hits an enemy with enhanced shot shells, the target takes 10% more basic attack, please do not resist, and dash attacks overwhelming firepower, stacking up to 5 times and lasting for 5 seconds. Each shot adds 1 stack of this effect and repeatedly triggers and the reset duration. So with this is very emphasis on her suppression mode. So with anti-interruption level is going to be increased, and being able to reduce your damage being taken, because you can be hit in this state. And this is something that's very important, because it's not like a regular dodge. Sometimes it takes a good amount of timing to dodge and move around with this character for that. So it's not something that's very easy and simple to do. It's kind of a more timing, you got to be paying attention as to how you're moving. For it to being able to stack up to 5 times is very good, since being able to use the basic attack and the overwhelming firepower, that's the combination of how suppression mode works. And so increasing that is very good. And again, this isn't her best cinema, but it is very viable for her to have. And with her suppression mode being something that she's going to use quite often, and since she's going to be using her enhanced shot shells a lot, which you should, that's something you should take consideration of. And so for Cinema 4, Ether Proliferation. When Zhu Yuan hits an enemy with enhanced shot shells, her basic attack, please do not resist, and dash attack, overwhelming firepower, ignores 25% of target's ether resistance. So this kind of goes hand in hand with Cinema 2. This is kind of almost like an add-on to it. So you're also going to be taking the resistance down of the target itself, of their resistance to ether damage. So that's really good. You're essentially going to be debuffing the enemy by 25% of the resistance of her actual element, and including with Nicole as well. And that's really good, since you're going to be doing more damage, since they can take more damage since they're less resistance to it. So it's just kind of an add-on of Cinema 2. And again, for it to be itself and its own cinema, it's good. However, it has to be in combination with Cinema 2. So I would again say this is not her best one. And finally, moving on to Cinema 6, Expanded Energy Pack 3. So when Zhu Yuan consumes a total of 12 enhanced shot shells, she receives an Ether Afterglow effect, and the energy cost of her next EX special attack is reduced by 30, and launching an EX special attack will consume Ether Afterglow and shoot an additional 4 bullets of Ether Buckshot, and each extra bullet deals damage to equal 220% of Zhu Yuan's attack. And this is kind of where I was wanting to hold off why attack is so important for her. So this is now why. So first, let's say, as for now, she she's going to be absorbing 12 shot shells. So that's something you need to accumulate and build up over time. So it's very costly, but it has its perks because one, your EX special is going to be reduced by its energy. So you're going to be able to use it more and use it more quickly. And being able to launch that special attack is going to be able to add more additional buckshots, which is going to, again, do more damage. But with each bullet that's extra, it's going to be doing 220% of her attack. And that's why I say for Disc 6 and for her substats to build attack, because that's something that you want to have, because adding more attack will increase that amount by that 220%. Since whatever number you have and you're increasing it, it's going to be multiplied by that 220%, giving you a higher number over and over time, the more attack you put into Zhu Yuan. And this would be by far her best cinema, and something that I would say could be a highly recommended thing. Would I say it's the end all be all thing to make her a good character? No, she is already a good character by herself with no cinemas at all. But it is a very good cinema if you really want to invest in her, and I would say invest in her quickly because she is going to be gone pretty soon. And I hope this guide really helped you guys to shape and mold Zhu Yuan the way you guys want to, and kind of build her the way that you think is beneficial for you. Because again, my builds is to just kind of give you guys an understanding of how she may work overall, but again, you can build her the way you want. It's a your choice game. This isn't something that is the end all be all, the only definitive decision way that you should. It's just a high recommended thing, just so that you can be effective on the field and also use your character as much as possible and utilize their skills as effective as possible. But again, I hope you guys enjoy this video. Make sure to leave a like, comment down below, and hit that subscribe button and hit the bell notification to be notified whenever I post a new video. And to kind of let you guys know, again, there is around staggering 98% of you guys that are not subscribed to this channel. So if you guys want, hit that subscribe button. It's free, and for more content I make in the future, if you guys enjoy it, it will be helpful, and it'll help me out a lot. So hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you guys later.